Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I'm one of your hosts, joined by, I should probably say my name, Chris Waterman, woo! Joined by Will Rotondi.
What's going on, man?
And we have, of course, May Finch.
Hello, hello.
And very, very, very special guest, Ev Schmidt.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Welcome to the show, Ev. We met you briefly on last week's episode. And we're going to learn a lot more about you in probably the next 15 to 20 minutes as we draw a side quest and learn about your history with film. On today's episode, we are discussing Event Horizon, which was Will's pick for Deja Vu, a category where we look at a film that is an homage or evolution of a particular genre or film. Very excited to get into that. But first, Ev, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's start with your history of movies, and like in particular, like what you like about films and cinema as an art form, and then you get to answer the big three questions that every guest gets to answer.
Man, what I like about movies in general, that is a really big question. I don't know if you're like a good friend of mine, you've probably heard me say this before. I just like movies. And what I really mean by that is that I just love stories. I love storytelling in all forms. So I also really love television and books and just like any form of storytelling. It's probably why I have so much fun being a dungeon master for D&D. So that is like a really key element for me about any movie, is that I really want the story to be intact and well told. Like no shameless exposition, no like symbols that are too obvious or heavy-handed, like preachiness or anything like that. Like just a good like storytelling moment. Like I hope you guys understand what I mean by that.
I do.
Um,
I do.
okay, good. And I am also a very visual person. I'm a visual artist. I've been like drawing and painting for as long as I can remember. So I do love me a good color palette in a film, like really good intentional stylized cinematography. Like Wes Anderson is a great example, I think, of a director you could call out with what I'm trying to get at. Not that a movie has to be hyper stylized like that, but I do appreciate it. I'm like, I see you, you know? So yeah, just like stunning visuals and good storytelling. I don't know about you guys, but for me, those are the big things about movies that I love.
I can get behind both of those things, definitely.
Same. They're
And I
like
think,
hallmarks of cinema. So
yeah, it's a visual medium, as you pointed out, right? Like it could do things that like a book like can't, and even like a play can't. It's a little more controlled. So I think that's kind of a plus for that medium, is that you get to kind of like perfect what you're trying to do as a director, cinematographer, whatever. You get several attempts at it, and whereas like watching a play, like what you get is what you get for that performance, and that can be exciting in the moment, certainly, but it's a little more raw.
absolutely. I actually had the privilege of going to an arts high school, and we had, of course, all these different arts areas, visual arts, theater, of course, including film and TV, and band, of course, writing. So, and I just remember one day in like junior year, it dawned on me. I was like, huh, if a director got together all the arts areas, we could make a movie. So I think that's another really cool thing about film, is that it really showcases like every type of art that you could make.
Yep, it's definitely a collaborative process. I've always like, on the one hand, I love like the auteur theory, like where you have your Scorsese's and your Hitchcocks, and I think there's some merit to that. What I don't like is when people take it to like worship, like hero worship levels, like ignoring all of the collaborators that make those things possible, right? So like, I don't know, I think of like using the same example of Hitchcock, like there is no great costumes without like Edith Head, who like designed like all the amazing costumes in a lot of his films, for example, his music with collaborations with Bernard Herrmann. So yeah.
Yeah. Probably
So
the only thing my arts high school didn't have was a costume department. Maybe someday.
yeah, I think like too, like a lot of people go to like fashion school and stuff like that, but I agree. I think like they should that would be a neat way to integrate like that type of like skill building like in a creative setting versus like a commercial one. I think that would be really, really
I
cool.
mean, maybe the technical theater kids did do it. I don't know. They were at the school till 2:30 sometimes, striking sets, so they did a lot of things. Costuming
Wow.
could have been one of them. Anyways,
Well, are you ready for the big three questions?
I have notes. I'm ready.
So the three questions that everyone gets asked are: what's your favorite movie of all time? What's the most recent film that you watched that, well, wasn't this one, Event Horizon? And of course, like, what are you looking forward to most for upcoming releases?
Okay, so in that order, I've never had a favorite film. I can't pick one, and you can't make me. I have.
Respect.
I refuse. I have whittled it down to childhood, adolescent, college, and now categories with only 2 films in each one.
Oh,
I'd
wow.
be happy to give you all of them, some of
Sure,
them.
fire away. Let's do rapid fire. Go
Yes.
for it.
Childhood, Fern Gully, Toy Story. Important note, I have continued to love Toy Story all the way on up through 4. It's not my most anticipated, but I am excited for the next Toy Story coming out, 5. Adolescent, Donnie Darko, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. She was trying to be deep. She liked to think about a lot of like existential philosophical things. you know, college, The Big Lebowski, Pulp Fiction. I took a few film classes. I realized that there was a lot of good cinema out there, but I do remember rewatching these a lot. Um, and now I'm gonna go ahead and say Barbie. I wasn't sure if it was a hyperfixation or not, but it's releasing on VOD today, and I don't know. The more I read about it, the more there is to unpack about it. So I will say Barbie. I think that is officially one of my favorite movies. And
Awesome.
Inside Out is my comfort watch. I really, really love it. It's
Aw.
I was a little older. I wasn't a kid when I saw it by any means, but it still really resonated with me. So I feel like it deserved to be on there. So that's my favorites.
Yeah,
Rapid fire.
Pixar films have like grown up like a little bit with like the audiences that like originally like they were like intended for, and they do animation in a way that I think few studios like do. You know what I mean? They certainly set the bar for like the kind of stories you could tell, and the
I could
heights of
go
like
on and on about Pixar and how much like they amaze and inspire me, but I won't because that's not what this episode is about.
what
I
is the most recent film you watched that was not Event Horizon?
a movie called Blackberry. Have you guys heard of it?
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
With Glenn Howerton?
Yes. Yeah, with Glenn Howerton. And I'm remembering his character's name from something else. Anyways, it was a very good movie. I really liked it. I was both like really scared of Glenn Howerton's character, but also like he was cracking me up because it's also like Dennis from Always Sunny. And this just felt like Dennis turned up to 10 and as a shrewd businessman, which really like fits very well. But in addition to that, it's like just a really interesting story to me. So yeah, like based on true events, the story of BlackBerry, the company. So I enjoyed like learning about that, and it was also really fun that it was like this time capsule of like the very late 90s and early to mid 2000s, like basically BlackBerry's heyday. So like it was fun to see like that homage with and like fashion and like even like the mise en scène, the set design and like stuff in the background was like very like era appropriate. It's funny to say that about like 20 years ago, but
It flips me out to see movies like that are now set um in my like not even like youth, but like adolescence and slightly beyond that are now like interesting true story, like biopic kind of shit. Like
Yeah,
the
and
so
there's like a history angle of it a little bit too. Yeah.
wow. Yeah,
I
way
kept
to
thinking, like,
make me feel old, I
"Oh,
guess.
I was
But
a freshman in high school in this scene." Like, you know, like
well, and to like recall something like that, that's like surely that wasn't that long. Oh shit, yeah, it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're
Part
old.
part of it is I think the turnaround time has also just gotten shorter too. Like I
Mhm.
noticed there's already something coming out about like the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial like
Yeah.
this year,
How did they even have time to write that and film that and edit it? Like, what?
right?
What?
Sometimes it's like they're just trying to like jump to the front of the line and just get the first thing out. Often not the best thing, but I don't know, like The Social Network was kind of unique in that like way that like David Fincher made a Facebook movie like either before or like right after they had like their like public offering when they went like had like their IPO and stuff, which I thought was curious considering. But yeah, kind of a trend, I guess, sometimes to do like a current event like biopic or film.
Yeah. It is a little strange, but it's the world we're living in.
For sure. Well, and especially like celebrity like culture, I think like has only like gotten more obsessive. For like people love to get that little peek into the lives of famous people.
It's parasocial relationships or something like that. When
That
people
sounds
like
right.
in their mind are like friends with celebrities.
And then what are you looking forward to most like for upcoming films?
So I'm honestly mad that this is a reboot type thing. But I am very excited for Beetlejuice too.
Aw,
Yeah.
Yeah.
nice.
I hope it's good. That's one of those things that like this much time it's either going to be brilliant because they'll reinvent it or they're just going to make Beetlejuice again like with everyone older and sadder like with like a new like star attached to it. Did I see that who's the woman that plays Wednesday, she attached to
Um,
play Lydia's
Jenna,
daughter? What's that?
yeah, she's gonna Jenna Ortega.
Yes.
She's gonna be in it, for sure. And I don't know, I trust Tim Burton. The only time he ever did me personally wrong was with his Willy Wonka movie. Um,
Mm,
so well, I don't know. Alice in Wonderland was kind of strange too. Anyway, he's usually great. And I really enjoyed Wednesday, the Netflix series. So
Yeah.
I hope that means he's like sharpened his claws and he's like ready to make or was ready to make Beetlejuice 2, and it's gonna be great.
I certainly hope so. I mean, like I'm rooting for that movie for sure because I think like Beetlejuice is my favorite film of his, like
Hmm.
hands down. I love Edward Scissorhands and Ed Wood, but like Beetlejuice is reigns supreme for me.
Ed Wood is a good Burton mention. I feel like people don't think about that one enough.
Yeah, it's a little like underrated, underwatched. I think because it is a biopic about a guy who made bad movies, and it's maybe not the easiest sell, but yeah, I liked it a lot.
Honestly, a hilarious pitch. I'm gonna make a movie about a guy who made bad movies.
I mean
Awesome.
the movie about The Room did pretty well, so it's not a failing model.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but that was like I feel like marketed so well because like The Room was like at its height and popularity for like midnight watches and things like that. And I think like just the press tour, like taking Tommy Wiseau like on the road with them to like talk about it as well, like was super helpful. Whereas like I don't know how famous Ed Wood would have been when like the Burton film came out. I don't even know, was he alive? He must have died before then. Um, but yeah, in any event, like that is a good point, May. Like I think like the what's it called? The Disaster Artist was like
mm,
gang, but it won some Oscars too, didn't it? Like I feel like it did, like, or at least was nominated for some shit, which was kind of wild. But, well, Ev, are you ready to see what the cards have in store for you in terms of a side quest?
I don't have notes for that, but I am ready.
It's extemporaneous, baby. All right. So this is I feel like a great pick. So the card is known only in myth. And this is where you get to pick literally any film that is like obscure, like something that you think would be hard to find that you love or want to just talk about. So it can be a random like we've had some like Will picked Surf Ninjas like from the 90s for one of his picks.
Hell yeah.
So like it really like any obscure-ish film that like for whatever reason you would recommend or just enjoy.
This is another one I watched a lot in college. It's called The Immaculate Conception of Little Dizzle.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
Tell me more.
it is so it has been a couple years since I've last seen it, but it's honestly like just such a mind fuck. Are we allowed to cuss or head
Oh, yeah.
trip? Okay. Yeah, it's one of those movies that's like just the like style of it and way it's put together is like very unhinged and chaotic. But in like a way that to me works. But it's also one of those movies that is sort of like shifting its focus, like what it like really wants to be talking about in the plot, like seems to change and sort of like comes together in a grand way in the end. I mean, I really like if I had to say one line about it, blue goo baby born out of dude's butthole.
Wow. Blue goo baby born out of I'm sorry, what was a dude's butthole? Okay. Yeah, just making sure
Very
I got the,
alliterative right there. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm an English major. Like,
Nice.
I'd love like if that was like the back of the VHS. I don't know if it's even like enough for a VHS, but it's just like starts to describe the plot and then it's just like an ellipses. Like it's like that's really great. So how old is this movie? And is there anybody like notable attached to it in terms of like cast or like
and here's the part where I'm gonna do some quick Googling.
Yeah, please.
I have to type in the title and plus film so Google knows what the hell I'm talking about. So biggest notable names are Natasha Lyonne.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Natasha Lyonne. And it is from 2009, year before I graduated high school. Yeah, not really any other big names that I'm recognizing. Natasha Lyonne is definitely the big name there.
Cool. And do you recall the circumstances in which you came across this?
Yes. A very dear friend of mine who was like my sort of like party Sherpa. Like he like taught me how to be cool and like do house parties.
I love that.
Yes, his name was Austin and he was a really good friend of mine and he showed me this movie because it is so weird and unknown and he just like loved super obscure things like that and always loved to be the person like showing people things. So yes, Austin showed me this movie.
Amazing. Well, Austin, thank you. You might be responsible for a couple of more people checking this out. I'm kind of curious.
How can you not? Blue goo,
especially with that tagline, especially in a world where a blue goo baby,
where a blue goo baby is born out of a dude's asshole into a toilet. I've said too much.
Oh man.
Toilet blue goo baby at that.
Now I'm just thinking righteous gemstones.
Me too.
Aww.
Aww. She thought it was a turd, but it was me.
Oh, well, Ev, hey, thanks for sharing your picks and participating in the side quests. I'm going to try to find some footage to insert around that for the YouTube video. If nothing else, a trailer, just so we can get a sense of the vibe. So
Yeah,
as always, listeners, there's an incentive to come check out the YouTube video, if for no other reason to see what all that's about.
Did you get the title's long? Did you get it all the first time?
I did. Yep. But you can repeat it one more time if you want for our listeners who might be like driving and going like, shit, I want to write this down.
Good idea. It's the Immaculate Conception of Little Dizzle.
There you have it. Screen Quest listeners. There's your next like side quest curiosity. Thanks so much, Ev. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rotondi to guide us through our discussion of Event Horizon, which we selected for Deja Vu. So
yeah, so Event Horizon, exciting stuff. Let me tell you. Now, so it's a film that came out back in 1997. I probably watched this thing when I was in, geez, if even middle school, probably, maybe earlier than that. And whether or not that was a good thing is arguable. But it was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and stars Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, Kathleen Quinlan, Jolie Richardson, Richard T. Jones, Jack Noseworthy, Jason Isaacs, and Sean Pertwee, and probably several other people whose names I will leave to IMDb for you. But I guess the long and the short of it is like a wonderfully, depending on how you look at it, either a wonderful or a gory B science action horror flick that came out in the 90s that may or may not be a little bumpy of a ride, but ultimately I thought was an entertaining suggestion for us to watch and talk about how it has influenced or was influenced in its, I guess, overall. I don't really know where I'm going with that. I'm sorry. I thought I had my stuff together tonight, and I think I'm just tired. But I'm just gonna go ahead and skip through the plot real quick for you, so I do not like talk your ear off, and we can jump into some general impressions. But the long story short, advanced spaceship folds space using a gravity drive and goes beyond the known galaxy. Comes back, brings back this malicious entity with it that causes members of a salvaging team that go out to it to start hallucinating. They've got a scientist guy who comes along with him who seems a little bit off and ends up going crazy and tries to keep the crew on the ship. The salvaging captain, who's played by Lawrence Fishburne, is like, screw that. We're going to blow this thing up and get out of here. Inevitably, most of the crew dies. Only 2 people are left. They do get saved, but the ship is arguably, probably, still haunted. So, any other plot points that you think I need to fill in there, or does that sound like a pretty good?
No, I think that's a pretty good description. It's a fairly straightforward, like, you know, in terms of like the setup and like what it is. So I think you did a great job.
Cool. Well, as usual, first impressions. And Ev, since this is your first time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you to tell us what you thought.
I would actually like to quote my fiance here and say that the film was visually stunning and technologically nonsense. This was like a thread throughout it. I was like, this looks so cool. But this man is really just crawling around in a hallway that somebody just lined a bunch of motherboards on. Like, like this dude's smoking, but like, and like smoking looks cool. Sorry, not sorry. I think it's great for films. Don't do it in real life. But people who do it in films generally look pretty cool. My man was doing it on a spacecraft. Like, so that was something that I kept noticing. But the overall plot and like story that was being told did definitely hold my interest. And I don't know, it was one of those movies that I had fun watching because I was like roasting it just like a little bit, like lovingly. Um, so yeah, it was a fun watch, and it made me like even more ready and excited for Halloween.
I feel like you have to roast it though, right? Like there's certain elements about it where you go into it and you're like, they're trying to be serious, but then they just kind of like veer off into like weird territory. And I know like you talked about the cigarette. For me, it's the captain's chair, like Lawrence Fishburne sitting in like what is arguably the worst designed captain's chair I've ever seen on a spacecraft ever. That just like wobbles around and turns really slowly. Everybody else is like hopping in and out of their seats, and he's just like, you know.
I do remember, like, it's like near the beginning of the movie, I was like, he's just gonna wait the whole time to like.
Yep, he's got to let it finish. You put the quarter in, you got to let the whole song play out, man. You can't just.
It reminded me of the old lady in Gremlins that's got the little chair that goes up and down the stairs.
Nice.
Like, this is like, what? Anyway, sorry.
Beautiful.
I don't know. I really like vibes like that though. Like things that invite you to roast them. And I knew nothing about this movie going in. I was like, I'm gonna be like a good podcast guest star. I'm taking this very seriously. Like, part of my notes are like writing down like, it's part of the deja vu category. What could it be referencing, and vice versa? And like, like here's a little plot summary of like the rolling like credit scene they kind of did to explain all the stuff that happened. But very quickly I was like, this movie is messing with me. Like, so yeah, I enjoyed it, especially for its roastability.
So I mentioned this to Chris and Evan yesterday, and they took it as a burn, but it's if anything, it's impressive. I don't think there's an original line in this movie. Like, I think everything is a reference or plagiarism or whatever you want to call it.
Come on, baby, don't let me down. I feel like I heard that line at one point. I'm like, oh yeah.
Or like the even just mundane stuff where it's like, wow, that really isn't everything. When they do the explanation of what a wormhole is with the paper folding, it's like I've seen that in so many different properties. Of course,
but that's because of. I was gonna say because of this show though too, or because of this film. I think was where that came from. So
okay, that was original. That's good.
Or at least it's been referenced twice. And I'll go ahead and just say this one for Chris because he hasn't seen Interstellar yet. Chris, you're going to watch it one day. It's in there. And then the other one was Thor: Love and Thunder. And even Natalie Portman's character makes some crack about after she does it. She's like, have you seen Interstellar? Have you seen Event Horizon? You should watch those. So, yeah. So it may have come from something else. Yeah, I mean that's definitely arguable. Yeah, but yeah, this is the film that I think of with that. So I think that's really funny that she mentioned that. But no, please continue.
I also have seen it pop up in Stargate.
Yeah,
and a few other places I feel. But you know what? I'll give it to Event Horizon for this, mostly because I don't want to try to find an earlier example. But
hey, you know what? I'm going to look up Stargate right now and see when that thing came out. Because it was probably around the same time. I mean, that was... Jeez. All right. So the TV series was like back in the late 90s. So let's see. It just... The
original Stargate, I think it's 94.
Nice. Okay. So that would have worked. Yeah. So you're right. Yeah.
Who knows? Nice. Who knows? But
so you had seen it before, and you're right. Here it is.
I honestly think it's impressive for a film to have so many homages and a perfect pick for this category. Although I got confused, and until you guys reminded me of the category today, I thought it was the trope soup category because of all the tropes.
Nice.
It was trope soup, though. Like it's part of that category too, for sure.
Definitely. We can double dip here. It's okay.
Yeah, for me and my boyfriend watching it, it just became a game of trying to spot the different tropes and references and stuff, and it wasn't scary really at that point. Also, just because like the effects haven't aged perfectly well. My other two comments are: one, I'm convinced this was designed for 3D. I haven't fact checked that at all, but with like all of the like random scenes of like bubbles coming up to the screen and like passing through, like that's some like made for 3D shit. Like I don't know, it caught my eye. And since we're talking about our favorite examples of like beautiful art but technologically impractical, I have to give a shout out to the BDSM gravity drive behind Will.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Kudos for subverting our expectations. No one got impaled that I can recall.
That's right. So yeah, you're like all these spikes. Somebody's gonna get it.
All of the
no.
spikes on that ship, that was a missed opportunity. If you asked me, I wanted to
Yeah.
see some space people as little kebabs. Okay, I'll say.
Aw,
But yeah, I had
nice.
fun not watching it as intended, probably, but I had
That's
fun.
okay. Excellent. All right, Chris, tell us what you got, man.
So the first thought that I had, like after this film got going, and I kind of had a sense of like what it was going to be, was that I would have loved this had I seen it like when it came out. Like I would have been all about this, like in its like heyday. Um, I think I missed out, unfortunately, on some of that like nostalgia factor for it. Look, I think it has a very strong like open. Like I was very intrigued by the premise, and I really um enjoyed the setup of the film. And you could tell that he has, like, Paul Anderson has a ton of reverence for a lot of really amazing sci-fi properties, which I'm sure that we'll talk about. If I had to judge his understanding of those properties and what made them work based on this film, I would say he learned absolutely nothing like about why those films are great in the first place.
Yeah.
Um I didn't really care for it, like, unfortunately, and I really wanted to love it. I think it was just like it needed to be like either worse or like better for me to enjoy it. Like if it was like a shade like worse than it was, like a little more campy, I think I would have really liked it. I think if it had been a little better, I would have been like, all right, like it's kind of a product of the time. But there's not a whole lot about this movie that worked for me. It was loud, like the loud noises like really started to kind of piss me off, where I'm like, is this what you're going to do to scare me? Because you're not building any dread. Like literally I just keep turning my TV down because like you're startling me with just, you know, out of nowhere like things. I will say like the non like where you have the warning for it is actually kind of terrifying, is the audio clip that they play. And I'm like, why would you want to continue towards that sound that we just heard of all the people screaming and stuff? That was actually kind of scary, but yeah, I don't know, man. It didn't. I wanted to like it. It just didn't work for me on virtually any level. It was a little silly, and there were a couple times that I chuckled. Um, it's kind of like Sphere, and like which is a film I have seen. And I feel like if I were to go back and watch that, I'd probably feel the same way. But I have the nostalgia factor, and I also have like the novel, which is like significantly better than like the film for Sphere. But I can see why this movie has a cult following. Like I think like I I do appreciate its influence on other properties. I don't know if we're going to talk about that as well. Like you can tell that there was a lot of influence like on the backside, like so before like pre this, but like especially in the video game like space, like there's some really neat stuff that like I'm like they totally got this from this film, which is I mean that's a good thing, I think, overall. Like you know, if it manages to influence other stuff, like it's not like a total loss. But yeah, I didn't really like it. But also Paul Anderson movies, I think maybe the only one that I kind of like is Mortal Kombat anyway, so I had
Oh
pretty
yeah.
low expectations. Like even the original AVP, like yeah.
Nice. Well, and actually, all right. So first off, and I was telling May and Ev about this when we had a little minor break, is that I actually really like when we talk about movies that not everybody likes, because I think it's more interesting to see the stuff that does work, doesn't work. In this case, it was kind of like we talked about Mission Impossible 2. And I sort of had like my thought about, all right, going into it, are people going to like it or not like it? You know, a certain amount of time has passed since that film came out, and how its evolution with the subsequent films since then. Whereas Event Horizon was like a one and done deal, and you know, arguably, there's been some question about will there ever be a sequel, and it's pretty much like not going to happen unless somebody else picks up that mantle. But I agree with you, because rewatching it, I remember the stuff that I liked about it, and and I had sort of forgotten all the stuff that I didn't like about it. But when I was a kid, the stuff I didn't like was mostly like in terms of it didn't really I don't know, because it's a horror film, as a kid, I should have expected most of the people weren't going to make it out. So I think I remember feeling like, oh, Lawrence Fishburne's dead. And oh, it's not really resolved. Very classic, as we're talking about trope soup, very classic, like, is
Final
it over?
scare.
It's probably not over, yeah. And like the people you care about, I'm probably not going to make it. And so that was, for me, that was mostly why. But I agree. There's just, it's like it's not really sure of itself. It's trying to be scary, and then it's trying to be kind of goofy, dark comedy, and then it's just kind of weird, like it's so yeah, it felt like it was just a rough ride, or the product of like what may have been a rough ride to get to. From what I read about it, there was like a version that was probably about 2 hours. This one, the cut's about an hour and a half or a little bit over, but about 2 hours worth of material that maybe might have had a little bit more information, but also arguably wasn't a good cut either. So I don't know, but I do appreciate that you guys were willing to give it a shot, because I thought it would be interesting that even if you didn't like it, that it would be fun to talk about some of the influences that it tried to use, for better or worse. And then, as Chris, like you mentioned too, the stuff that's come after it. So let's talk a little bit more about what's influenced, or that you might have noticed that we've either talked about before, or that has that's come up. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just while we're still in general impressions of it, I did want to shout out two specific things I really liked about it.
Yeah.
Because I was almost like surprised to be like to have things that I actually really enjoyed about it.
Mhm.
Um, and that was that like any horror movie depicted what happens to an unsuited human body out in the vacuum of space. It wasn't like the most accurate depiction, I'd say. But to just include that, I have always thought that that's like so horrifying, and like so I was just like, yes, like that's the stuff. Like that's truly very scary. So I love that they included that. I don't know of any other horror films that have even tried to depict that. Might be showing my ignorance there, but so I thought that was cool and unique. And I also really enjoyed that the two people that did survive happened to be a woman and a black man, which in horror is like, those are unfortunately typically the characters that are the first to die. So I thought that felt very intentional, that he was actually trying to subvert a trope. I don't know if it was, but I liked the outcome either way. And well, I don't know. I have some debates about whether or not they were actually saved. So I maybe a little later. But
Yeah.
yes, I just wanted to mention that there were at least two things that I felt the film did really right.
That's
I think you
actually a
make
great point.
excellent. Go ahead, Chris.
Like, I was gonna say, like, the cast is probably the least cliche thing in terms of like
Mhm.
the archetypes.
Yeah.
Like you don't have like the snappy, like sarcastic, like doctor, or like, I mean, like, he smokes, I guess, which is like, I feel like a lot of the doctors in like the space stuff like are like smokers, like always. But yeah, like no obligatory, like I should say, like tantalizing nudity. Like there is like the shot where he's like embracing his like deceased wife, but it's not used for like titillation. It's like, you know, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I did appreciate that. I think the cast is the least cliche thing, which was surprising.
They I appreciate the diversity among the cast. I will say a lot of them did feel kind of caricature-esque, but I think it's partly
For
just because
sure.
there's so much happening in this film that could only really have one or two defining character traits. Like Peters is the mom and Cooper is the funny guy, and but
Yeah.
I feel like that was more just because they didn't have time or space to actually flesh them out.
Yeah, and I also like, it's a woman and a black man that survived, which is great, subverting tropes, but it also just so happens to be like one of the only characters that a sexual comment was made about at the beginning of the movie by the man who survived alongside her. So like it's not perfect, but I was like, okay, I see you. Like you chose those specific characters.
That's true. And especially for Cooper, who we figure was probably going to get offed at least 2 times beforehand in the movie, and then is like not only like a source of comedic relief, but also like manages to get back on the ship after getting blasted off of it.
He was doing the
So
most, dude. That was like
Right?
Cooper's no good, very bad day, and he fixed the other ship. He saved himself from starving to death or lose it, like just running out of oxygen out in space. Like, yeah,
right.
he was doing the most.
I want to see the movie from his point of view because that would be a great movie.
That would be.
If they reboot it, that's the only way they're allowed to reboot it.
I did chuckle when he's like, "Oh shit, I can't slow down," you know. Inertia, baby. You know, like.
Oh man. All right, well let's step back a bit. Ev, you made a good point. So we'll pivot a little bit. Let's talk about how stuff that we've seen that's come after this film that we can reference back to it, and we'll do it just a little bit differently because your comment about Justin, the character floating in space, Baby Bear, who like has basically stigmata, space stigmata when his eyes start bleeding out. And then Miller flies in and like grabs him and takes him back into the ship. There have been, I think there's probably been about 2 or 3 other movies I've seen where somebody's been exposed to space, but I've never seen it depicted like that. But I would probably have to say for the most recent example would be Guardians of the Galaxy. Just seeing characters in space, almost dying in space, not necessarily. And that could be like the very first Guardians of the Galaxy, film that came out, not necessarily any subsequent sequels. Although I feel like in every movie at some point, somebody has been exposed to the vacuum of space. But that's Marvel. And we all know the Marvel train. So.
I actually don't. I have protected myself from all the Marvel IP recently, except for the Spider-Mans,
Nice.
multiverses. Anyways.
Nice. Well, yeah. So, I mean, besides that, I there was a movie called, I want to say it was Mission to Mars. I feel like that one had it. I could be wrong. I definitely know that Total Recall had some interesting ideas about what it's like when you get exposed to atmosphere.
The
But
bug eyes.
yeah. Oh man, like that sort of exciting not prosthetics, but animatronics, I guess, or yeah, that was really cool. So yeah, man. But yeah, any other examples that you guys can think of about that particular scene or anything else that stuck out to you that you were like, okay, I've seen this done again in a more recent property?
The only one I can think of is the Magic School Bus.
Nice.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Awesome. Like the Netflix expanded or like the original?
No, original. I watched this as a kid and I
Yeah.
forget his name, but it's the kid that never wants to be there.
Arnold.
Takes his space helmet off because he doesn't want to be there.
We didn't wear
It's
these
like,
in
I'm
my
done
old
with
school.
It's like the I think you should leave sketch where he's like in the paper mache.
How did that go for him?
Yeah, what happened in the episode? I don't remember this one.
He like started having like that reaction to space, and then Miss Frizzle instantly swoops in and like forces the helmet back on. But like it starts to happen from what I remember. Yeah.
Wow.
That's wild. Wow. I love that for them.
I have to go back and watch that now.
Got that past R&D. Like,
no bleeding from the eyes though, just like can't breathe.
I think he got like really he like started swelling up and like got like really cold and like yeah.
Oh geez.
Yeah. To be fair, it was just the helmet coming off, not his whole body exposed, but like the worst part of your body to get exposed.
Yeah,
nice.
I used to be a science educator at Museum of Science and History. And we had a planetarium there, so I had to know what happens if you go into space without a spacesuit. I got asked very frequently, so I had to have a very accurate, family-friendly answer. So yeah, part of me was like, this would all happen so much faster. But I mean, and I don't know about the eyeballs exploding in that specific way, but the lungs and breathing all the air out of your lungs is a very good idea. Might buy you about 2 more seconds.
Nice. Does it help that maybe the event horizon was in cloud cover in the planet's orbit? As opposed to like way out in space.
That is a good question. I don't think so.
Okay. Sorry, Justin, you wouldn't have made it, buddy. All right.
Yeah, an example
about
that
you,
comes
Chris?
to mind is a TV show example, and that's The Expanse. Like
Yeah.
spacing people, as it's called, like is used as like the primary form of like execution, and they have several very memorable scenes where people get spaced, and they definitely depict like the effects on the human body when those scenes happen. But are we talking about other things as well? Because I like I said, the video game space, like Doom 3, like so like the like when they try to make Doom horror, and Dead Space are the ones that really came to mind, like in terms of
Nice.
like coming across like a space where something has gone tits up like a while ago, and then trying to kind of like figure it out, and it being a combination of like external and internal forces, which again, like I think for a setup for this movie is really interesting. It's like it's not just external forces, it's also sort of like people within the space that are sort of being Jack Torrance into like madness and become threats in and of themselves. I think that's kind of a cool idea.
Nice, May.
I had to drop that.
Yeah, so she shared a nice little image of of Arnold getting spaced.
Oh gosh, I'm throwing that in the podcast. Thank you.
Yes, please. Hell yeah.
You want proof? I'll give you proof. Here's proof of what'll happen to you if you stay here with your stuff. Arnold, no!
This week.
They found a way to make it kid friendly, but yeah.
Nice.
I'm dying. His head is just unblockable.
It's funny that Chris, that you mentioned The Expanse. So I haven't seen the entire series, but I remember the opening scene being something like because isn't there like in the first season, like the main female character they're going out to find is in a ship, and isn't she also like floating, kind of like the dead body at the beginning of the Event Horizon shot is sort of like the jump scare that Dr. Weir like dreams, maybe, or maybe doesn't dream. It's just kind of floating in front of the glass screen. Is that sort of the same way with the lady in The Expanse at the like that same sort of opening establishing shot where she's in zero G but not necessarily dead? Or am I misremembering that?
I'd have to go back and compare them. You're talking about like Juliette Mao, like when she's like trapped in the locker, like the kind of the setup of where it's like, well, why is she here? Like what's going on? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it almost looks like she's underwater, and like is like you're like, oh, is this person dead? And then they're not. But yeah, I have to compare. That's interesting. I could see that, certainly.
Yeah. That's mostly what I thought of in terms of that. And then you had mentioned video games. And I was reading something random, and I wish I could remember where, but it was something to the effect of like, it's probably Wikipedia, but people talking about how they felt like Event Horizon is sort of like a not like indirect prequel to like the 40K, the Warhammer 40K universe, where they figure out how to, go through using this advanced technology, like another dimension, and like the demonic forces that are awaiting them there, kind of a thing that come back. So I thought that was pretty funny for any Warhammer fans that are listening to the podcast. But
that is so interesting. I can kind of see it.
yeah. Well, before we jump a little bit farther in, and depending on how time goes, maybe not get to all the questions that I've got, but I do want to jump back and talk about stuff that we thought we'd seen before. Chris made a nice little Torrance reference, so I have to, we have to talk about The Shining for maybe just a second, because I feel like this when I watched this film, to me it was like Solaris and 2001: A Space Odyssey and The Shining and Alien all had like a baby together, and this is what popped out. So
also Evil Dead in space.
Yes. So so let's talk about that. And anybody feel free to go ahead first.
I love that you guys said Shining. I'm just now realizing that, like, I was like, what is this, like, evil thing, like, turns people against each other thing I'm trying to think of? And it was The Shining. Nailed it. Um, yeah, I picked up on those vibes without being able to name it. And obviously some alien stuff, but that's, I think, a pretty easy connection to make.
I appreciated that, like with the Shining references, there's the obvious one with all the blood coming out of the tubing suddenly from nowhere. But also like right before that, there's that bathtub scene with the dead wife, and I appreciated that as well. But yeah, it also feels very Evil Dead in space, just kind of like ill-defined, demonic, kind of cheesy entity that's really over the top and like evil because cannibalism and sex, and
That's how you do it.
Dead by dawn, dead by dawn.
And it's like there's really no clear motive beyond just like the possessive force, like or like really clear and like explanation of how Sam Neill's character gets possessed, because he just designed the thing. Like, was he always possessed and like the possession led him to this? I don't know. But
are you talking about Dr. Jurassic Park?
Yeah, Dr.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park.
That's what I called him throughout the whole movie because I missed his name.
But overall, I feel like if I had to come up with an alternate title for this movie, it would be Evil Dead in Space or Solaris the Parody.
Nice.
I see it.
Certainly made me appreciate Solaris like so much more. And I mean, still think it's a little bit long. Like, I don't know if that movie needed to be 3 hours, but I think the way that handles it is somehow it's maybe not scarier, but I feel like I felt more dread with what the entities kind of like the fact that they don't want to be alive and how terrible that would be to like be ripped from like non-existence into existence and not know what you are, and to be like a manifestation of somebody's like psyche made physical. Like there's something really terrifying about that. And this film like kind of like started to do that, and then it like backed off, and I was never sure like what's real, what's an hallucination. Is this demonic? Is it like scientific? Like what the fuck is, and I don't think that like I necessarily need an explanation for like a movie like this to work, but what I do need is some consistency. And like I gave up like like probably halfway to 3/4 through trying to figure out like what the rules were, and I think that kind of helped or made me less afraid in a way, because I was like, oh, literally anything can happen. Like, okay. The Alien, definitely, it kind of being the haunted house mentality, where the ship seems to get kind of darker and more beat up and smokier as the film progresses, which is what happens to the Nostromo in an Alien.
Don't forget the space lightning.
Yeah. The thunder, my gosh, man.
And the weird medieval rooms. For a second I was like, wait, did the movie just change? Because I'm seeing lightning out the window and there's this weird medieval like interior.
Is that a pipe organ playing? Like, what is happening? I think Ev, like, I like how you said like that there's sort of the personification of the place, like that. Again, very cool idea, like that I don't think you see in a lot of horror films, like where like the place itself is sort of like this malevolent force, and unrealized like in its potential, unfortunately. But yeah, that's very, very, very true. Good point.
Yeah, this is a great example of like the setting is its own character. It's really an obvious example of that, in fact. But yeah, I was also confused about the rules of the hallucinations. Like, right when I thought like, oh, these hallucinations aren't really real, like not actually happening, like that lady's kid is not on the ship, then the Matrix guy hallucinated the fire, and it was real fire on the ship, like things were actually on fire. So I was like, what? Like, maybe it's
he even looks properly surprised by that. He's like, oh shit.
I don't know, like, maybe that's a high level spell for the ship and it doesn't want to burn its spell slot, so you're not going to see it use it a lot. I don't know.
It's the best theory I've heard.
I like it.
I do have to like take a step back too. I'm glad that you mentioned like joking about the Matrix and everything, but like so the way that Lawrence Fishburne delivers his introduction to the crew made me feel like I was listening to Morpheus explain everybody on the Nebuchadnezzar again in the Matrix. It felt like the cadence to his voice and just like the speech almost. So I don't know if that was like a nice little homage in the Matrix in a weird way, or if he just does that because that's just how he do, or I don't know. But I for a second there I was just like, what film am I watching again? Okay, yeah.
That's a screenwriter who doesn't trust the audience to intuit like by watching the characters do their thing, I think a little bit. That's how I took that.
Vibes were so real that when the brunette lady that was the mom walked by, Matt, my fiance Matt was like, and they got Trinity in this. Like, how far are they gonna go? And then we realized it wasn't actually Trinity, but I kind of wish it was. She'd have been great.
Nice. Yeah, definitely Alien for the I think almost like the setup too. You know, you get like a crew that's sent in, and without ruining for, because I know May you haven't watched Alien yet, so I'll keep it very high level. I know, yeah, like censor me out. That you have a crew that gets sent on a mission, and you have a scientist who's kind of there at the last minute that people don't know. And then you have a malevolent force that you're encountering and trying to deal with on a very confined ship. Although in this case, the ship is sort of confined and sort of not. You know, it's like the long, elongated shape of like the ship from 2001. And yet also like tries to do like that sort of Gothic architecture look to go in with the like the overly religious symbolism that's kind of really in your face, from the design of the ship like a cross, or I guess the iconography that you see in it, or even the guy who's got like a cross around his neck from their crew that's kind of chewing on it when they're talking about going in. So yeah. I think the next question that I had then for you, just out of curiosity's sake, is did you have a favorite character out of everybody here?
This is 1000% in spite of myself. Baby Bear.
Yeah.
I did not want him to be my favorite, but he ended up being my favorite. I don't know. I was really invested in him surviving, and they didn't mention it really after they gave him the emergency care until like the last scene, and I was like, where is he? Like, so I don't know. Maybe not favorite, but it is the first one that came to mind when you asked, so it's gotta mean something.
I'm glad that you mentioned it too. Before I pass it over to May and Chris, I'd like to also fact check myself. I'm pretty sure I said like 2 people survived at the end of this film, and I forgot about Justin because he was still alive. He was in his cryo tube. So 3 people survived to the end of the film. Cooper and Justin, and I swear I remember her name, Stark. I don't know how I could forget a name like that. Let's make it out of the end. But yes. So how about you, Chris? Favorite character?
Cooper's the dude with the oxygen like flying towards the ship.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite character, just because of his durability and determination, and probably has like the funniest parts of it, crashing into the window and then immediately like being like, oh god, there's a guy with a gun like trying to shoot me, and he still manages to make it inside and get out. So that's my pick, I think.
I gotta go with Smith because again, proper response to a haunted ship. No, I want to stay on my own ship. I'm not getting on that damn ship. Please fix my ship so we can go home.
Yeah, play the demon noises, and he's like, nah, I'm good. Everyone else is like,
he's like, I don't care what Latin he's speaking, like it doesn't matter, don't go.
Yeah. most reasonable person here. Even if he's a bit hot-headed.
Yeah, you know what? And shout out to him too, because he was willing, even when he knew there was a bomb on the Lewis and Clark, on the ship they took in, he was like, fuck that. I'm finding that thing, and I just patched this thing up, man. Like, we're going home. And then has like a I felt like a flashback to like the Fifth Element with the little time counter when he finds the bomb. But yeah, I felt bad for him too. I thought he was a good guy.
Yeah.
Got a little hot, like you said, a little hot headed. Everybody kind of almost lost their stuff there, but yeah, good choice.
One of my notes is just all the men are getting pissy.
They're having moments. Yeah.
Yeah, the men were like, I noticed they were affected maybe a little sooner than they were depicting the female characters as being affected by it. So I thought that was kind of interesting since, you know, men typically have more testosterone and stuff.
Men are just so emotional.
Yeah. How can we trust them to run a
True.
country?
It's true.
True.
You're making a good point. So like Stark we don't see anything that affects her, right? And we don't see anything that really, like, we see DJ, Jason Isaac's character, he with the sharp objects and like he's ready to cut somebody, but like I don't think he really, besides hearing things, right? Maybe like he doesn't really see anything that we see. So I'm just trying to think about like.
And the other female characters' hallucinations were all like fear-based and maybe guilt-based, like around her kid, and not too aggressive. So, you know, kind of an interesting choice.
Runner up for my favorite character is the kid that's just like, haha, you fell in a hole.
Womp womp. I do have to say, I think Miller was one of my favorite characters, just because I think I like him for the same reason that I like Sigourney Weaver's character, Ellen Ripley. It's that they're put in really difficult positions and they stay. I mean, don't get me wrong, even Miller like almost loses it a couple of times, but like reasonably so. Like any normal human being who's put through emotional stress would probably react. And yet he has this almost like unnerving sense of calm, even when he is terrified about something going on, that he still tries to keep it together and keep everybody else together, and knows that he has to make a hard choice. And so I don't know, I think I always really appreciated that about him, and that sort of resiliency. But yeah, still feel like crap because he died. Sort of leading back to what we had brought up at 1.2 was the question of, are things really over? And so I'd like to hear all of your thoughts about, you know, because it is tropey, whether or not we think that has any influence on the answer to the question, but just sort of your thoughts about where it would go from there and why, whether you think it's over or if the next exciting installment of Event Horizon Horror is like just a movie away. And May, I'll go ahead and pick on you first.
Great, because yes, I mean,
why not?
well, because Stark has that nightmare when she's coming out of stasis, which is mirroring exactly what happened to Weir at the start of the trip. So the implication is that she's cursed or haunted or whatever now. At least within the world of the movie. Conceivably, that could just be PTSD or a nightmare, but within the world of the movie, it seems to be implying that she's now possessed and will want to get back to the haunted ship. And it just feels like a cheap kind of like, oh, we have to have like a little thing in there that's like a little bit of a cliffhanger. So if we want to do a sequel, we can have that as a jumping off point.
My interpretation is that they for some reason went into cryo sleep. I guess they had no choice. I don't know. I would not go into cryo sleep knowing that there was something that could like mess with my mind subconsciously. But they did. So I feel like, I don't know. And Weir had those couple lines about like she's not gonna let you leave, you know, with his like fabulous accent. So, so I can't imagine the ship really just wanted blood and death, even though it did want that. I think it's sort of, you know, it's company, some friends. So it's just going to keep these guys in cryo sleep forever, torturing them mentally. And that's my interpretation of the film.
It's a little grim, but I love it. Yeah.
Not for the ship.
That's right. Yeah, tortured until the next like sex blood orgy, right? And then whatever like happens to the. So that's my other question then too. And I guess Chris, I could ask you this as well along with your thoughts. Like, what do you think happened to the original crew? Like, where did all I mean, we see all the blood and stuff on the wall, but like, was there not one person left? Like, where did everything go?
There
They're
was a hand.
in,
All right, take it away,
yeah.
Chris.
I think they're just in they're in like the other dimension, you know, like that's kind of
Uh,
I interpreted like they got left behind or ripped out of the ship and the ships got sent back like as sort of like a lure,
gotcha.
but who knows? I don't know. As far as my interpretation of the end, yeah, I think I agree with May's point where it's like madness is like a contagion that is like, you know, a result of whatever this otherworldly entity thing is, and I think you're meant to imply that like now it's going to spread like maybe beyond event horizon, you know. It's kind of hitched a ride.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same camp for a couple of reasons. Because of the fact that the image that Stark sees of Weir's face is only seen by Miller. Like nobody else saw him all like sliced and diced. So I sort of thought, well, yeah, if you have that image in your head, then probably there's some connection there. And then also the fact too that Stark was the one who said something to the effect of like feeling like the entire ship was infected and had some piece of whatever had come back floating around or was part of it now fused with it. And since they're still in technically part of the ship, even though most of it got blown up, you know, that maybe there's still like an essence of whatever had haunted it or inhabited it or possessed it is still there. So, yep, I'm kind of in the same boat on that. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll get a sequel.
Hopefully not. No.
Like, no.
I think it'd be
Chris will
cool.
not be making any online petitions anytime soon.
Maybe it'd make a cool video game. Like I could see this being like a neat, like, you know, could do a cool like Event Horizon game. But yeah.
All right, guys. Well, before we wrap up and play a game, any other last thoughts, questions, concerns?
Everything was eyeless until it wasn't. Okay? What's up with that? The eyelessness was a motif through the whole film. He comes back in his final, most scary form, and he has freaking eyes.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. That part made me mad. I was like, where did
Makeup
he come
department had already packed it up for the
I
the
guess.
film shoot.
Maybe they weren't his eyes.
Ah.
I don't know.
Maybe it wasn't really him. Maybe the real Weir got sucked out into space and it was just a hallucination of him.
I don't know. I just had to bring up the eyeless thing because I mean there was some continuity stuff in the film, but to me I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You're just abandoning this motif. Like, why? All right. Anyway, that's all I got.
I think I remember reading somewhere that they had an alternate version where Miller ends up fighting the guy who he thought was a representation of the crew member that he had seen burned to death on that other mission, and they scrapped it and went with changing it to have Weir's character be like the reveal at the end. So that may have something to do with it, but I agree. That's a good point.
So maybe Chris was right. They just weren't prepared to do any more eyeless SFX.
We have spent the budget.
Sam Neill was like, fuck that. Like, you got your one shot with me wearing this probably no doubt uncomfortable prosthesis or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, some actors are very vain too. Like he may have been like, if my face looks all crazy like this, like at the very least, like let me have my eyes. I don't know. I know there must be a reason for it, but I don't know what it is, and it will probably keep me up at night.
Sigourney Weaver famously got paid a boatload of money because they needed to do some reshoots on Alien 3. And she had a clause where it's like, once my head is like shaved and like the film is like wrapped and like my hair is growing back, if I have to shave it again, you're gonna have to like back up the dump truck of cash. And like they had to,
nice.
to do that. Good for her.
I support that.
My only other thought on this film is, boy, CG's come a long way, hadn't it?
Yeah.
Hasn't it? Like,
it's true. Some of those outside shots were pretty good, but yeah, like the stuff floating around inside the ship looks very hokey now. So yeah, that's a good point.
It was not unlike Flubber.
Oh,
yeah.
that's a
Like the Robin
solid
Williams
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also want to point out that, I don't know why this triggered, but like, why did he has like literal copies of like the same photo of his wife on the desk? Like the art department
Yes.
couldn't be bothered to take a few extra photos of like the same
Yo,
woman. Like,
that memorial was too
Yep.
much. I was like,
Yep.
dude,
like
no.
It's not
Yeah.
creepy at all. Yeah. No issues here. We're good. Yeah. Or like the one that's like right next to the tub. Like, ooh.
Wonder why that's there.
But we'll find out later.
Oh man. That's a deleted scene right there. Director's cut, baby.
That's where that extra 20 minutes of footage went to. I will say it's funny that so apparently this movie was a lot gorier than what was originally shown, and so they cut a lot of that out too. So that may be what's in the deleted scenes that may or may not show up. But anyway, back to you, Bay. Any other thoughts?
My last thought was just that again, probably not the first place this happened, but the way they string up DJ, I was like, oh, Midsummer.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Like that, or like Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
It's like when Hannibal makes the angel out of the cop, like when he escapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they did that, I was like, Weir did that very quickly. Like, I was impressed.
Right?
That was some precise work.
He got right down to business. It was like watching a chef like dispatch like veggies, like prepping like for a meal. Just
nasty. All right, guys. Well, I think that's pretty much all I got. I think shout out to the movie Sphere, like Chris, you mentioned, that does sort of, I feel like came out around the same time. I honestly couldn't remember if it was influenced or may have been influenced by this, because I think they were about a year apart. But just the idea of the sphere itself versus like the gravity drive, and like we see in the image behind me there, for those watching our YouTube video. But obviously the book came out like a decade before that. It was about like 87 or something, I think, when the book came out. So I don't know, maybe might have had a little bit, might not have been. People might
just read
like
the book. Like
metal
if you want like a
balls
good version of the story, just read the novel.
Yeah.
Sphere, which is
For
an
sure.
excellent like techno thriller, sci-fi, whatever. Yeah.
All right. So this is a little two-part experiment here. I would like each of you to name me, and we don't necessarily have to do all of these, but name me name me 3 sci-fi or movie tropes. And they can be either from this film or just in general, but probably from this movie if you'd like. Just that come to mind.
The self-destructing ship at the end that everyone's trying to escape off of.
It's the designated scientist / medical person / smart person doing a big plot exposition dump, so you know what actually is happening.
Yeah. Armageddon. I think it's also it's Jason Isaacs in that, right? Where he's like explaining that like if you were to like shoot missiles at the asteroid, but if you close your hand around the fist and uses the firecracker analogy. Yeah, I love it.
I think like I hope I'll say this right. Like the inventor in love with his own invention, like so much to his own detriment.
Yes.
That's a great pick. Yep.
I'm glad, and this is completely random. This should have been a finishing thought thing, but I'm glad that you brought up like the scientist like in love with his invention to like the detriment of everybody. Because I think the one thing for me, and this is very much like The Shining, at least the film version of it, where I'm sort of confused as to like what the motivation was for why he sort of went bonkers. Like sometimes he seemed like he was with it and other times he wasn't. And so I think that sort of like confusion for me was why I didn't like the film. Like, as a critique of the film I was like, are you okay in the scene or are you not okay in the scene? And also what's going on and why are you not trying to help other people out? So that just sparked another random thought on there. But
yeah, I agree. It was I don't know, that was probably the most annoying part of the movie, is that nobody had decided on a logic of how any of this will happen or works. I wish they had.
I would like to randomly assign you one of these tropes and ask you to pitch me an idea for a sequel to Event Horizon. So I would like you to tell me how exactly Event Horizon 2, your own title pending, what exactly would happen if there was a designated scientist or medical person who's trying to explain what has happened and what happens to the characters that we see at the end of the film. And Ev, since you are our guest of honor, I would like to hear your take first, please.
Okay. So the tropes that we said were like mine, the inventor in love with his own invention.
Yep.
What did Chris and May say?
So we have the self-destructing ship.
Yeah.
And then the the scientist or medical person who gives the exposition as to what's been going on.
All right, here's my pitch. It's exactly like the first film, but
Nailed it.
new younger scientist who had like maybe they were like an intern under Weir or something, or their parent was, I don't know, and they think because they have access to his notes or whatever that they have found a way to make the black hole without getting hell brain, right? So they think they have this false sense of security that they will maybe spread to the the crew that's there. And it's definitely one of those sequels that just tries to be a new version of the first one.
Excellent. So tell me what happens to the ship at the very end if everybody's getting hellbrain. Also, I like the term hellbrain.
Yeah,
great. Hellbrain. Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. We don't have a cure for hellbrain.
We don't.
I mean, fire might work. Arguably, fire works, but
oh my gosh. So in the end, this ship actually finds because it is connected to the old ship still in some way that we don't have to explain because we don't have to make up a logic about how any of this works. So the new ship is going to find the remnants of the old ship, and it's gonna almost like a giant mech suit, build upon it and become even more horrifying.
I love that.
That's so great. This is like some anime shit.
Yeah,
it's just it's incredible.
And then I want to see us go to this crazy dimension, and then right when we get there, the movie just sort of ends.
Setting up cocky, it's assuming a second sequel is coming.
To be continued has to come across the screen, or to be concluded. Yeah.
And there's an explosion at some point, and all of that. You can throw it in where you want.
I like it. That's cool. So the mecha Event Horizon goes through to the nice. Solid.
And
I like it.
Makes sense.
The new ship is called the Event Sunrise.
Amazing.
All right. We'll greenlight your picture.
That's my pick.
Awesome. I love it.
Great job.
All right, May. Hit us with your pitch.
Oh, we're all doing them.
Yes. Oh, I thought Ev was just getting to do
everybody
it.
gets a shot.
I should have been brainstorming while I was talking.
No, this is better. Trust me, it's better.
I go first. You want time?
I'm already. I'm getting ready. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this after Evan's sequel? Or?
No, this is this is a different.
We're building a franchise.
Yeah.
Where James Cameron, if you want to, there's going to be 6 of these films.
If you want to, sure.
So in this film, it goes when the direction of someone that like saw that Good Omens was super popular, but like completely misread that whole situation. It was just like, okay, we're gonna do Event Horizon 2, The Heavenly Bodies, and build a second ship.
Looking for the benevolent.
That has a white hole gravity drive.
Oh.
And in doing so, they think that, oh, they're going to go to this really great dimension and like save humanity. This is in the even more distant future where like climate change is a huge crisis and we really need like some heavenly intervention here. So they're like, well, if you know they could get to hell, we can probably get to heaven. Let's try it. And
gotta try it.
In creating this ship, they accidentally summon the original Event Horizon. They're attracted to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge crisis when it looks like both are going to explode and annihilate each other and destroy every single dimension across the universe. And it's saved just in the nick of time by Lawrence Fishburne, who just kind of reappears. We don't know.
Sweet.
He's
Does he
become
have eyes?
He does have eyes, but he's also like somehow become like the president of hell. I don't know.
Right.
But
President of hell. I love how hell's like a democracy. It's so accurate. No, I'm just kidding.
and yeah, he saves the day. And there is like a scientist on board, but they're there just to be like the contrarian atheist who doesn't believe any of this is actually happening. But they do like have kind of a redemption arc, and they do get to have their plot exposition dump moment.
I love it.
That's good. I like it too.
I love bringing in the celestial element.
What was that? It was Event Horizon 2 Heavenly Bodies? Was that
Yes.
that was the title? Okay.
There are sex scenes, yes.
Yeah, mine would just be
I
called
mean,
Event
it's sort of assumed, yeah. All right. Chris, what do you have for us, man?
All right. So true to the Event Horizon franchise, like roots, this movie is going to like be an amalgam of like all kinds of different genres. First of all, the title, Event Horizons, just like aliens, like it's just gonna be like we're just gonna multiply it. It's gonna be plural, like right off the bat. You know what you're getting into. Stark, right, was one of the surviving crew members, so they're gonna make her the Ripley, who's like a consultant, and they're gonna send in like a crew of like badass like space marines to like go onto the other side of the portal to like stop the threat once and for all. The exposition dump is going to be once again explaining how the technology works, because they're going to assume that nobody watched the first film and are just banking on like kind of a soft reboot. And so they cross into the threshold, immediately get their ass kicked. They're stranded on the other side, trying to figure out a way. You've got the perky, like overconfident scientist that devises a plan where if they can use like the original, like, because you got to have nostalgia, right? They're going to go back onto the like Event Horizon itself and like MacGyver the engine to like destroy the hell portal once and for all. So the countdown starts. They're trying to extricate themselves from the other dimension. They get through the other side. There's the explosion, and everything seems like it's great. And then just like hundreds of the wormholes like open up, and like the forces of hell come like pouring out of the black hole at the end. So
I would watch that, Chris.
I would too.
All right,
Listen.
listen.
Hearing you talk about it, I was like, then what happens?
Paramount, I'm here. I'm available. I will make this the right level of bad. Do not worry.
Yeah. What you said about like it couldn't decide if it was taking itself seriously or just going to be camp, like really resonated with me.
Oh, and they like where the genre crossing, when they're fighting they're just zombies. Like it's just people that have gone crazy. Like there's an inordinate amount of like crazy people like zombified like on the other side, even though like the original crew was like what, like 6 or something. I don't know. Like they're just not gonna explain it. It's like, why are all the like human zombies everywhere? Yeah. Anyway, that's my pitch. Event
I like it.
Horizons.
A round of applause for all the pitches.
Yeah, dude, I'd watch any
for
of those, to
sure.
be fair.
You can play them all.
All of them sound better than the original film.
Even mine, which just was the original film.
That's how
Dude,
every
oh my God.
successful like sequel is done these days. So you're on
It really
brand.
is.
I had to represent that somehow.
My only request is if you have anybody from the original come back, please don't have them be old and depressed about their life. Like that's the only thing. I don't need somebody I don't need heroes that have turned into depressed old people.
No, they're gonna be thriving so much that it's like a one more thing, like one more mission kind of thing.
Sweet.
At the very least, give me like
Yeah.
the Laurie Strode like in the Halloween like 2018, where like, yeah, she's a little bit of an alcoholic and she's a little traumatized, but she's also a badass who has just like been like doomsday prepping and like ready for like the challenge. I'll take that. Like that's fine.
All right,
Thank you
guys,
for the
well,
game. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. See,
we have a knack
perfect
for
timing,
starting
man.
to talk at the same time.
We're on the same wavelength, so I gotta switch off, man. But thank you all again for humoring me with that, and also for humoring me with watching that exciting film. So thank you.
Thank you for pitching it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad to get this off the list, man, because like I've heard it talked about for years and I've seen like lots of GIFs and stuff. So I'm glad to have finally seen it.
Me too. I'd never heard of it before this, honestly, but I feel like a richer, fuller person for having seen it.
Well, the last thing we have to do is to draw a card. And of course, I would love to hear Ev plug her projects outside of Screen Quest one more time. So let's find out what we're going to be watching next. And then we'll hear a little bit from Ev and we can skedaddle. Alrighty. Ooh, it is going to be an End of the World, which is our apocalypse, post-apocalypse category.
Woo.
I believe this is a May pick based on the number.
And I don't even remember what I put.
Yeah. Ah, dude, hell yeah. All right. So it is a May pick. The film we're going to be watching is Akira.
Hey.
Nice.
I believe, is this our first animated film on the
I think
podcast?
so.
Which is really, really exciting because I know we have more than we have a few. I just don't think we've gotten to it. So very excited for this. Raise your hand if you've seen Akira.
I haven't, even though I nominated it. It's
Whoa!
Yeah.
Great.
I've never
Okay.
Misdirection.
have studied the famous Akira bike slide.
Yes.
That is, like, any animation nerd will tell you, that's super famous. It's referenced in all kinds of different animated movies and series alike. And I actually have animated my own Akira bike slide.
That's cool.
But with a little witch on a broom. It was for a Halloween thing. But anyways,
Yeah. Can you
yeah.
please send that over? I want to like show that like just put it
Okay.
somewhere over there. But that's really cool.
But yeah, the Akira bike slide. So you guys will see it. I'm sure you'll be like, whoa, like that. It's like such a short little series of just frames, really, but it's huge, very iconic. So look out
Doesn't
for that.
Kiki Palmer do it in Nope as well? Like, isn't there like a little reference to that? Like, yeah. Well, dude, I'm so stoked to hear what you guys think because I knew virtually nothing about that when I saw it. Like I just kind of went in, like I the iconography is like pretty much the only stuff that like I knew about it. And yeah, that's all I'll say.
I know a lot about it and I just haven't seen it yet. Like I'm aware of like a lot of the different cultural influences it's had. And I was like, you know what? I should actually just get this off my list of shame. And here's a category it fits in.
Well, I'm very excited to talk about this next week. And hey, before we wrap it up, Ev, so thank you for being a guest. you do a lot of cool stuff outside of occasionally DMing for us in our D&D group, and of course hopping on to random podcasts. Can you plug some of your cool stuff, please?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I do make handmade artisan dice. So if you play games like Dungeons and Dragons or any other tabletop role playing game, I can make some dice for you. I have even made like very specific dice before, like D16s, which is not your sort of typical number of sides, but I also make just your standard, like, cubes with dots on them that you would find in a Yahtzee set. But it's beautiful and custom made and, unlike anything anyone else has because I made it with these hands instead of in a factory. So, yeah, it's just a really neat gift to get someone or yourself is some handmade dice. So that is Double Take Dice on Instagram if you would like to check it out. And I would also like to plug my art Instagram because, holidays are coming up. A lot of people like to get commissions of their pets, their loved ones, maybe both. And I have done so many holiday commissions. I have a friend who actually like gets me to draw her Christmas card that she sends out for the past 2 years now. So I'm looking to get those going started soon here because it will take me some time and I want to have them ready by the holidays. So if you want to check out my work, maybe think about commissioning me, that would be Instagram.com/sketchinevan. And it's not sketching like I'm a sketchy person. It's sketching like I'm drawing. Okay. Sketchin no G Evan, Evin. And I'm sure, Chris, would you mind putting links in the description as well?
You beat me to it. I was going to say for podcast listeners or YouTube watchers, you can find links to both of those in the podcast description. And I'll probably be showcasing some of your stuff here as you're describing it in the video episode. So if you'd like to see examples, they'll be flying across the screen of some of Ev's work, which is terrific.
Thank you so much. And also thank you to May and Will and Chris for having me on. This was so much fun. I really felt like I was back in a film class in college, which was one of my favorite college classes I ever took. So I had a blast and I might want to guest again in the future if you guys would have me. So
Yes,
thank you guys
please.
so much for letting me join you.
Yeah, welcome back anytime. You can submit your own suggestion like Ev has actually done by clicking on a link that you'll see in the episode description. We are going to be closing those pretty soon, but if you'd like to squeeze it in there, get your own film into the deck, we will certainly be happy to accommodate that. And you can even be a guest to talk about it if and when it is drawn from the pile. Well, that about wraps it up. You can find us at ScreenQuest Pod on X, and we appreciate your support as always. Till next week, we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.